look at the weather.
It's beautiful here.
Non-stop rain.
Oh, man, it is a blazer out there.
It's cold and it's shivery.
It is cold.
Really coming down here.
I really enjoy your weather reports.
From the All Indiana Podcast Network, we're talking weather in a whole new way. From historical events to what's coming up, plus weather news, science, safety, fun facts, and more.
I like where this is going.
This is Weather Weekly. Weather Weekly with Wish TV Storm Track 8 meteorologist Marcus Bailey.
Episode number 84 of Weather Weekly. Good to be with you here for the last full week of the month of August. Is that right? It is right. Good to be with you. I'm meteorologist Marcus Bailey. Man, time's just flying by. Football's going to be around the corner here soon. Fall weather. Oh, yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. Although, hey, you know what? We've been feeling pretty good here. For August standards, we'll take it. Usually the dog days of summer, but temperatures have been lovely. So is the humidity. And some of those intermittent rains, chances that we've had have not completely alleviated all the dry conditions, but the drought has been busted up a little bit. So we will take it. On today's episode, couple of things. I wanted to highlight the historic flooding that took place earlier in the week down in Dallas. Pretty devastating. Unfortunately, at least as of recording this, there's been one fatality attributed to the flooding in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So I want to talk about that. And today I'm recording this on the 23rd. Now this will drop on the 24th. But the 23rd marks the 30th anniversary for one of the most devastating hurricanes that's hit the lower 48, the United States. That was Hurricane Andrew. So we're going to talk about a couple of things here coming up next here on Weather Weekly.
Searching for a romantic summer getaway? Escape with Rich Girl Summer, the new Audible original from Lily Chu. The exquisitely talented Philippa Sue, returning to narrate her 5th Lily Chu title. This time, Philippa is joined by her real-life husband, Stephen Pasquale. Set in Toronto's wealthy cottage country, aka the Hamptons of Canada, Rich Girl Summer follows the story of Valerie, a down-on-her-luck event planner posing as a socialite's long-lost daughter, while piecing together the secrets surrounding a mysterious family and falling deeper and deeper in love with the impossibly hard-to-read and infuriatingly handsome family assistant, Nico. Caught between pretending to belong and unexpectedly finding where she truly fits in, Valerie learns her summer is about to get far more complicated than she ever planned. She's in over her head and head over heels. Listen to Rich Girl Summer now on Audible. Go to audible.com/richgirlsummer.
Episode number 84 of Weather Weekly. Good to be with you. A couple of subjects that I want to briefly discuss here. I mentioned before the break here, it's a pretty historic flooding that took place in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And unfortunately, as of recording here, so on the 23rd, there is one fatality associated with the flooding that is going on. It was a 60-year-old woman that perished while she was in her vehicle, and it was swept away into the floodwaters. Some of just the quick notes here. More than 15 inches of rain fell in some areas. Many of the roads there had turned into rivers. Hundreds of flights delayed, canceled at Dallas-Fort Worth. We mentioned the fatality, unfortunately. Some of the mornings that are coming out from Tuesday morning. A lot of this all happened on Monday, the 22nd, basically from late Sunday night on the 21st through Monday. There is now a state of disaster declared in Dallas County, where they're now requesting federal assistance. It wasn't just Texas, although Dallas, obviously the big city that was impacted here. But even Louisiana was hit pretty hard, eastern parts of Texas. Some of the rainfall numbers that came out of the Shreveport National Weather Service office exceeding 7 inches in some spots over a 24-hour period. Water rescues were still taking place as late as Monday evening, just kind of looking on some of the timeline on Twitter here. Lots of power outages. Rainfall did top 15 inches in spots in East Dallas, according to the National Weather Service. That was confirmed by around 3 p.m. Eastern time. on Monday, on the 22nd. So just devastating flooding there. And again, it just came from some tropical remnants that just parked themselves right over the Dallas area. The good news is they are starting to quiet things down. At least as of right now, and there's minimal rain in the forecast over the next couple of days. But it's interesting, and it kind of goes to, we've talked about our drought situation, and then we had to deal with some flooding issues a couple of months ago. I know once up around Fort Wayne, and then we had some other issues as well with some pretty heavy rainfall. And these were areas that were in drought. Texas is in a pretty significant drought. But you can only take on so much water. Doesn't matter how dry you are. You can only take on so much water at one time. And 15 inches is a lot of water in less than 24 hours. Anywhere. I don't know if there's many places that can take that much water on well at all. So that's going to be probably an ongoing story as they will recover from that here over the next several days, as those waters will take time to recede. So that's what's happening now. I think it was important to bring up here a pretty significant benchmark anniversary. It's 30 years for one of the costliest and one of the deadliest, most and strongest hurricanes on record to ever hit the U.S. mainland, and that is Hurricane Andrew. Made landfall on today's date, and I mentioned today that I'm recording, the 23rd of August. Back in 1992. So just kind of making you run through. Well, I guess I should kind of give you the quick stats here. So August 23rd, 1992, and that's when the rain bands moved over Florida. And the official stats here, 15 direct fatalities, 29 indirect fatalities. When you're specifically talking about just Florida, as a $25 billion damage price tag. It was a Category 5 major storm. It is ranked as the 6th costliest hurricane on record. At the time, it was the most costly. $50.5 billion with a B. It made landfall at Homestead as a Category 5 hurricane, and then it moved into the Gulf of Mexico, curved north, and came ashore in Louisiana as a Category 3 hurricane. So it double dipped. There's a few more hurricanes that have since been more costly, and I'll go through those. Number 5, Irma in 2017, $52.5 billion. Sandy in 2012, $74.8 billion. Obviously, you can debate that all you want. Better known as Superstorm Sandy, even though that's not a real word in the meteorological sense. But it was no longer a hurricane once that made landfall up toward New York City. Number 3, Maria, 2017, $95.5 billion. That was over Puerto Rico. Harvey in 2017, not an exceptionally strong storm. Once it really did all of its damage, where the problem lied is Harvey just kind of camped out. It did make landfall as a Category 4, but then it just didn't move. And it ended up dumping that immense amount of rain over Houston. And then obviously number 1, and it's not even close, Katrina 2005 at $170 billion. And of course, most of that destruction was due to the failure of the levee system in New Orleans. Okay, so Andrew at the time was kind of a benchmark storm. It still ranks in the top 5 as strongest hurricanes. Labor Day hurricane of 1935 was the strongest at 185 mile per hour winds. Camille in 1969, 175 mile per hour winds. And then Andrew ranks 3rd of 165 mile per hour winds when that made landfall in Florida, followed by Michael in 2018 and Ida in 2021. That's the most recent. And Ida was kind of the big tester for the new rebuilt levee system around New Orleans when that made landfall. And it did hold up with a 150 mile per hour winds there. So still a top three hurricane there. So quick notes about Andrew. So, and it does go to show, and I'm not saying that there are similarities to this hurricane season compared to 1992, but it is so far, up to the month of August, so far has been a very quiet hurricane season, as was 1992. Case in point, Andrew made landfall in August. And if you're, paying attention, we go alphabetically in the Atlantic hurricane season. That was the first hurricane or named storm in the Atlantic season. And it just took that one to just really pack a punch. So quick notes on Andrew and the effects on Florida, which I'll focus on more because that's where most of the devastation was. At the time, it was the costliest disaster in the state's history, as well as then costliest on record in the United States. Andrew formed from a tropical wave on August 16th, 1992. In the tropical Atlantic Ocean, it moved west-northwest and remained weak for several days due to strong wind shear. However, after curving westward on August 22nd, the storm rapidly intensified to reach peak winds of 175 miles per hour. Following its passage through the Bahamas, Andrew made landfall near Homestead, Florida, as a Category 5 hurricane on August 24th. Eventually, Andrew struck southern Louisiana before it dissipated over the eastern United States on August 28th. Strong winds from the hurricane significantly affected 4 counties in the state of Florida, which damaged or destroyed over 730,000 houses and buildings, while leaving more than 1 million without power. The storm surge impacted portions of Miami-Dade County, peaking at around 16.9 feet just north of Homestead, near the Burger King International headquarters. The surge caused significant damage to boats and to the Charles Deering estates. The nationwide maximum rainfall total from the hurricane was 13.98 inches in the western portions of Miami-Dade County. No major flooding was reported in the state. The hurricane caused about $25.3 billion in damage and 44 deaths in the state, 50 directly from the storm's effects and 29 indirectly related. Many other sources, however, estimated that Andrew caused more than $34 billion in damage in the state. Andrew was, at the time, the costliest hurricane in the history of the United States. It was surpassed subsequently years by Hurricane Katrina in 2005, Ike in 2008, Sandy in 2012, and Harvey, and we just mentioned that, Irma and Maria in 2017. So those are kind of the quick notes of what happened there. So some of the impacts here briefly. Some officials in Florida considered Andrew the worst storm in the state since Labor Day hurricane in 1935. Almost all the damage in Florida was caused by strong winds. So you compare that to, Katrina, which was the costliest hurricane on record. That was all due to flooding and levee failure. Although effects from Andrew were catastrophic, the extent of damage was limited mainly from Kendall south to Key Largo due to the small wind field of the storm. Following the storm, more than 1.4 million lost electricity and another 150,000 were without telephone service. It is estimated that throughout Florida, some 63,000 homes were destroyed, leaving at least 175,000 people homeless. In addition to homes, the storm damaged or destroyed 82,000 businesses, 32,900 acres of farmland, 31 public schools, 59 health and facilities or hospitals, 9,500 traffic signals, 3,300 miles of power line, and 3,000 water mains. Overall, Andrew caused $25.3 billion in damage And we mentioned the 44 fatalities in Florida alone. However, other estimates report that Andrew caused $32 billion in overall damage. Of the 44 deaths, we mentioned 15 were direct, 29 were indirect. It was later noted that had the storm been slightly larger or made landfall a few miles farther north, it would have significantly affected Miami and Fort Lauderdale, which would have resulted in even higher damage and likely death toll. So in Miami-Dade, that was kind of took the brunt of this. On the coastlines, tides were generally light and usually ranged from 4 to 6 feet in Biscayne Bay. However, at the Burger King International headquarters, a storm surge of 16.9 feet in height was observed. The building suffered more than $24 million in damage and forced the company to abandon corporate offices during one of its more significant product promotions. Nearby at the Charles Deering Estate, 16-foot large waves ravaged the property. The natural areas were devastated, while only the farthest inland sections of the Richmond Cottage remained standing. Damage to repair the estate cost approximately $7.2 million. A large boat was lifted ashore in a canal south of Deering Bay, where water levels were 14 feet above normal. So many boats in southeast Florida were damaged from high tides produced by the storm. Most notably, the Belzona barge was damaged, which was a 215-foot, 350-ton barge at the Boca Chica Key Historical Site. A bridge and stone wall were destroyed. In addition, the powerful seas also extensively damaged Coral Reef. Coral Reef system offshore of southeast Florida. It is estimated that the storm caused at least $500 million in losses to boats. At Homestead Air Reserve Base, then known as Homestead Air Force Base, a barometric pressure of 922 millibars was measured, making Andrew the most intense hurricane to strike Florida since Labor Day hurricane of 1935 and the strongest tropical cyclone to make landfall in the United States since Hurricane Camille in 1969. Throughout the state, rainfall totals range from light to moderate, with precipitation from the storm peaking at 13.98 inches in the Everglades portions of Miami-Dade County. Extreme winds were reported in Miami-Dade. At some locations, the anemometer was either destroyed or failed before the highest wind occurred. A home in Perrine reported winds of 212 miles per hour. However, after a wind tunnel testing at Clemson University of the same type of anemometer revealed a 16.5% error, that wind speed figure was revised downward to 177 miles per hour. At the Kendall Tamiami Executive Airport, sustained winds of 127 miles per hour was noted for 3 to 5 minutes, though the needle failed before conditions deteriorated further. Sustained winds of 115 miles per hour and gusts to 164 miles per hour were reported at the National Hurricane Center headquarters in Coral Gables. Shortly thereafter, the anemometer and the WSR-57 radar at the National Hurricane Center were blown off the roof and destroyed. Offshore, the Seaman station at Fowey Rocks reported sustained winds of 142 miles per hour and gusts nearing 170 miles per hour. However, the instrument there failed shortly after 4 a.m. on August 24th as the wind field of Andrew was small. The northern extent of hurricane-force winds only reached to Miami Beach. So, pretty incredible wind reports there. Now, the aftermath, shortly after conditions from Hurricane Andrew subsided, then President of the United States George H.W. Bush assessed damage in the Miami area with then Governor of Florida Lawton Chiles. Bush quickly declared the region a disaster area, which provided public assistance to victims of the storm in Broward, Collier, Miami-Dade, and Monroe counties. In addition, Lieutenant Governor Buddy McKay flew over the impact area and noted that it looked like a war zone. On September 11th, 1992, then Governor Lawton Chiles considered asking the Florida State Legislature to raise taxes, citing that no matter how much Congress appropriates to repair damage from Hurricane Andrew, the state will face a substantial clean bill. So, that's kind of a rarity that they were going to ask to raise the taxes there significantly to help kind of foot the bill from the damage. So, pretty incredible stuff there. They've rebuilt since then. There have been new building codes because of that as well. And it did have some sort of political impacts on then President George H.W. Bush, who only ended up having about a 65% approval rating of the handling of the disaster in Miami-Dade County alone, and only 61% for the entire state. So, and then, of course, he ended up losing to Bill Clinton later in the upcoming presidential election. So, again, one of the stronger ones that we've had, and it came off a relatively quiet hurricane season where that was the first not only named storm, but the first storm that made landfall in that 1992 season. Very similar to what we've had this year. Thankfully, there's no signs of anything like that, although there's a little bit of activity kind of ramping up. It does go to show, though, that you always need to be prepared. Always need to be prepared because, and I was reading just kind of in preparation of doing this podcast briefly, they were interviewing then acting man in charge from the National Hurricane Center, that since then, you haven't really had a direct hit from a massive hurricane in that same area of Florida since. It's been 30 years. And so there's a whole new generation that has no idea what that's even like. And so you become complacent and you don't really think about preparing. And this is when you need to kind of have that plan in place. Those that went through it, I'm sure, still keep it in the back of their mind about how horrific that situation was. I vaguely remember, Andrew, I would have only been 11 years old when that happened. But I do remember it being an enormous story nationally. And I remember kind of being glued to the Weather Channel when that was going on. That was kind of my first, I think, real experience watching wall-to-wall coverage when it came to some type of severe weather event. And I just remember the devastation that happened. And it was tough to comprehend the magnitude of it because living in Indiana, you didn't get those type of large systems like that. So it was something to behold and something to see, and hopefully something that we can continue to learn from over the years as we get farther and farther away from some of these mega hurricanes causing significant damage. No issues like that out in the tropics, thankfully. And you know what? No issues like that here closer to home as well. It's been very quiet weather pattern. We'll see if that continues as we look ahead to the rest of your week forecast here. That's coming up next on Weather Weekly. Here's a look at the forecast for the rest of the last week of the month of August. You know what? Pretty good looking forecast here. No major complaints. We're going to keep things pretty quiet for the remainder of the week, we believe. Now, we're going to gradually kind of warm things up, mid-80s for your Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Friday, got to keep an eye out if you do have some outdoor plans. I don't think it's a huge issue. We have a real weak boundary, a cold front that's going to kind of work through the state, dying off Friday, and that could squeeze out a few isolated showers. I'm not real big on the chances. We maybe go 20 to 30% on the high end. It's just very spotty. Not a lot of not a lot of moisture involved with that, so I'm not overly concerned there. Weekend does look to be a bit warmer. I think we're going to kind of dial up the humidity a bit more as well. Upper 80s, I think, very much in play for both Saturday and Sunday, and then that will carry over, I think, as we start rolling into early next week, where I've got numbers close to near 90. It's been a couple weeks, too, since we've actually hit 90 degrees, so that's still very much in play. You want to go beyond that, however. The long-term numbers are showing a bit of a cool down, I think, by the middle of next week, where we could see highs in the mid and upper 70s. The 8 to 14-day outlook's going near normal with the temperatures, and could have a chance for above average precip for the southern third of the state, below average for the northern third of the state. So something to keep an eye on. The September outlook is also out, and no significant signs that we could go either way. It's kind of equal shots for both temperatures to go above or below normal, and same thing goes for precipitation. Could go above or below normal for precip as well. So no strong signals there as we go into the new month, which we will kick off next Thursday. So a couple of weeks from now, we'll do the September preview here. But thank you for joining us on this week's podcast. We appreciate your time. If you have any feedback or you'd like to for us to cover a subject, you can shoot me an email anytime, marcus.bailey@wishtv.com. You can also find me on social media, Marcus Bailey Weather in the search bar on Facebook, and at Marcus Bailey, both on Twitter and Instagram as well. I think you can find me on TikTok. I don't remember the name. I don't really post much on there. I've got a couple of videos, but may start to try and do that a little bit more. I don't know how handy it is with weather related things, but everybody, all the cool kids seem to be on TikTok these days. So I think it's also Marcus Bailey Weather on TikTok. So you can check that out as well. Good to be with you, and I hope to hear you and see you next week here for another great podcast episode. While you're here, make sure to check out all the other great podcasts, all part of the All Indiana Podcast Network. We'll talk to you next week, and God bless.
Discover more from Storm Track 8 Weather and Wish TV. Online at wishtv.com, and when you follow Wish TV on Facebook. Plus, be sure to check out more great podcasts from the All Indiana Podcast Network now at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.